Hey everyone, it's Microwave Sam. How are you doing today? This video is part 5 and the final part of the How to Create a Personal Website with Bootstrap series. So part 1, setup, part 2, navigation, part 3, carousel slider, part 4 was about and portfolio featurettes, and part 5 will be footer and deployment. So let's see what we have right now. So we have a navigation bar with a nice header, information about ourselves, and featurettes. And the coloring is a little bit off, but this is currently what we have. So it's a simple website with some small information about ourselves. If we go to About, we see About page. If we click on Portfolio, we see the portfolio sides. And you have links to your social media, etc. Now, what do we have left to do? Well, normally, when we look at a website like this one, let me just open my zooming program. We normally see a footer at the bottom, and this footer is just something that makes the page look a little bit more legit. So we view the page source, and we will copy the footer and paste it into our page. So let's scroll all the way down. After the final featurette divider and the featurettes, we will paste our footer. Let me just fix the tabs a little bit, make it all nice and neat. Okay, that should be good. And then bring this over here, Control S to save, refresh our web page, and we have a footer right over here. So one thing that's not working correctly is that it's not angled centered correctly. So one thing that we want to do is we want to put this within a div container. So the container is basically a Bootstrap class that provides a pretty nice standard width, a centered standard width. So if we wrap footer inside a div container like so, it will have a width kind of in the center. So that's what we see right now. And one thing that we don't need is this featurette divider from before. So we'll erase that to bring. Oops, accidentally clicked that terminal. Refresh the page. Okay, well the featurette divider was kind of good, so we'll bring that back. And we'll look again, and now it looks pretty good right now. So I guess what we should do is maybe the featurette divider doesn't work very well. We'll think about it for a second. But as for the copyright, you can do 2015 Microwave Sam or your name. Let's see what else we can put. Privacy and terms. We don't really need these two links because we're just an individual. And these dots, I guess they are okay. And then you can do something like this, made with heart by your name. So let's see how this looks like. So basically, oops, I guess it's hearts instead of heart. Okay, so now it currently looks like this. And last but not least, we want to probably change the color of this heart. So I'll put an ID equals heart. And I'll cover it with a span. Spans are usually used for just a single word or a sentence, not a lot of content. And we can add to our custom CSS at the very end. We can just say heart color, some red color. I guess I can just do red and see how that looks. So it currently looks like this. Made with heart by Microwave Sam. And we can reposition the whole index a little bit. So let's just add something for the footer, where the footer should have margin bottom about 5 pixels because it looks a little bit too close to the bottom. Maybe if I do something like 10, save this. Okay, so that's not taking place. So I think that we should add an ID to this container and just call it footer. And by adding that ID, we'll just change this custom CSS with the pound symbol for the ID and then try to add a margin bottom to reposition this. Maybe let's try margin top, see if it takes. Okay, so it's not taking effect for some odd reason. Okay, so let's see if I take this ID out and put it within the actual footer. Okay, so that works. So what I want to do is do margin bottom, and what I did was I moved that ID footer into the actual footer. So when you put it within this div, it does not take effect inside the footer. So we will use something like margin bottom. Let's try like 50 pixels to actually see if there's a difference. Okay, so yes. So by scrolling down, I see that it's positioned pretty nicely. Let's just do 20. And then let's delete this featurette divider because it seems that we can just use margins, and I don't want to use featurette divider to bring that space. So we'll do a margin top 20 pixels and a margin bottom 20 pixels. And it looks like it's positioned pretty nicely. So what we currently have is something like this, and that size is pretty good. But what's probably more useful to us is changing the background color to the black color from the top, because we want, usually when you think about it, headers and footers are typically the same color. So we probably want to change this to the same color as on the top. So to do this, we'll use a class, and we'll use the navbar class from up here. So we'll use navbar inverse, and we'll scroll back down, paste navbar inverse, navbar, we'll save, and we'll refresh. So that's what it currently looks like. So it looks a little bit off. It definitely looks a little bit off. So what we should do is, instead of using this class, we'll just change the color of the ID. So when we look at navbar, by going into our bootstrap.css file, and we search for navbar inverse, we can see what color they actually use. So the background color they use is this 222. So we'll just copy that, and then because if you look at it currently, when the navbar is placed, it doesn't fill the entire width, so that doesn't really work for us. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna just take the color itself, and we're gonna fill this color, background color, with the hash or the pound 222, because we can see in the actual bootstrap.css prepackaged file, we can see navbar-inverse has this background color of 222. So we'll see how that works. So that's what happens. Okay, so instead of just doing it within the ID, I guess we have to set an ID, or let's check by doing some in-style CSS, paste it inside, and we'll save. Okay, so that's what it looks like currently. So what we need to do is we'll take this inline style, and what we will do is wrap this whole entire container with a ID, or a class would be better because we might reuse this. So gray background, and we'll close the div. And for that class, we'll do, I guess I'll put it before the footer, and I'll put it right here. We'll do gray background, and we'll put that background color, gray background. Okay, let's refresh, and now it fills the entire bottom. So now it looks pretty nice, but we want the color to be completely white so that we can actually see the text on the words. So by doing that, text looks pretty good. And as for this link, we should also change the color of the links. So we'll do footer A. By doing two values, we first look at the ID footer, then we look at all the A hrefs, and we can change the color accordingly. So if we do white, it should change to white. So now you have the same color on your footer as in your navigation bar, and it looks pretty good. As for the color of the heart, you can change it a little bit. Let's just quickly go to color picker to find a better red, because that red looks a little bit too bright, or it just looks too plain to me. So we're gonna make it a little variation of the color red. Let's take this, and instead of just using a plain red color, we'll just use a more custom one. So going back to the web page, now that looks a little bit better. And back to the top refers to the pound symbol, and I said this in part 3, where the pound symbol goes to the top of the page, and you have your complete website. So this looks pretty good to deploy. So now we will deploy your website. When it comes to deploying a website, you can use something like AWS Amazon.com to create virtual machines where the website will be deployed on a public IP and a public website. Basically, what I'm saying is that you can send your files into AWS EC2 virtual computers, and they'll deploy it for you without a domain name. Now, if you want to use domain names, like for example, I like to use Namecheap.com to find popular domain names. For example, if I wanted microwavesam.com, then I can search for it and I can purchase it for whatever cost it is. Normally it's around $10 for .coms. But I can search for any domain on this Namecheap.com website. I can purchase one of the websites over there. So AWS handles deployment while Namecheap handles domain names. So I'll log into AWS, and the reason why I'm showing AWS is because the first year you use AWS, it's completely for free if you use free tiers. And that's really useful because everyone likes free stuff, right? So I'll log into my account, and I'll show you something called EC2. Now EC2, you can create virtual servers in the cloud. If I click on EC2, it brings me to the management console. I'll select instances, and I currently have 2 running instances, and those 2 instances are my personal website and my blog. You might have seen Sloth Paradise around, so that's my blog, and I have it on EC2 instance. So you can launch new instances, and they have these things called free tier eligible, where for the first year and onward, it should be completely free. Sometimes, if you get a lot of traffic, you'll get a couple of dollars, or $5 tops, or $10 tops a month, or every couple of months. Like right now, every few months, I get $10. So every 3 or so months, $10 charge, that's it. And that's not really a big deal for me. And I have 2 instances running a free tier eligible. So you select one of the free tier eligible. I'll select the Ubuntu version. And I'll keep these configurations by default. It'll give you 8 gigabytes of memory, hard drive memory. And I'll keep on going until I hit security group. Now for security group, I'll find the security group, personal website security. And the security types that you want on are SSH, HTTP, and HTTPS. So these port ranges allow your website to be viewable on the internet, and also you can access via SSH for remote access to the machine from your computer to that virtual computer at Amazon's data center. So we'll review and launch, and we'll launch it. As you can see, it's Ubuntu Server 14.04, free tier eligible. Ubuntu is one of the Linux instances that are quite easy to understand for people who are unfamiliar with Linux. We'll create a new key pair, and I'll just write tutorial personal website. So you want to download your key pair because a key pair consists of a file where you use it to log into your instance. So you use it to SSH into your instance. So we'll download the key pair, I'll save it to my desktop, and I'll launch instance. You only have one chance to download this key pair, so make sure you download it. So I'll launch the instance, and I'll go back to EC2. I'll go back to instances, and I can see that it's pending in booting up. So right now, we want to get an SSH client, and what an SSH client is that Windows does not default come by with SSH. So SSH stands for a protocol used to remotely access onto machines. So we'll search for something called mobile xterm that allows us to SSH into a machine, so access remotely onto the virtual instance on Amazon's data center. So we'll search for download, and we can just download the free tier eligible. Just download now. I already have it on my computer, so I won't download it again. But you can download that file and just install. It's a quick install. Now looking at our instance, it's running. So we'll open up mobile xterm. And mobile xterm is just this black terminal looking window, similar to Unix terminals. And we'll first cd, which stands for change directory. We'll change to our C drive. And we'll go to users. Or, it's not users, but, well, first we'll go to C drive. And we'll cd again to users. And we'll cd to my username. And we'll cd to our desktop. So these are the two commands I just typed in. Now, if we ls, which stands for listing all the contents of the directory, we can see everything inside. And the first thing we want to do is we want to see ls-lah, which stands for looking detailed information about all the contents of our directory. So we press enter, and we see that there's a tutorial-personal-website, and it's owned by Wheelie, and the user group is users group. But the permissions are incorrect because RWX stands for readable, writable, and executable by myself and also the user group. But we don't want anything readable or writable by the user group, so we'll use chmod, which stands for changing permissions, 600, which stands for readable and writable by only myself, and we'll put the file name. And we'll hit enter. Now for the SSH command, we can SSH -i. -i stands for specifying a key name. We'll do tutorial-personal-website.pem. We'll use Ubuntu as a username because by default, Ubuntu AWS instances have Ubuntu default username. We'll do @ we'll click back to our EC2 management console and we'll collect the public IP. So copy that, right click, copy, and we'll paste it right here so that we have SSH-i, the tutorial personal website.pem, Ubuntu at the public IP, and we'll hit enter. So we'll get access to the virtual machine, and the first thing that we want to do on the virtual machine is to install some things. So we need an Apache web server so that we can deploy our website. So we'll do sudo, which stands for the super user, apt-get, which stands for the package system on Ubuntu, install, and we'll install Apache 2. So we'll hit enter, press Y, enter to confirm, and continue, and we'll wait until this installs. Now Apache 2 creates a folder in /var/www/html. So we'll do cd/var/www, and we'll see this HTML file. Now, if we look at the actual page of the public IP, we can see Apache 2, and we see the contents of this default Apache 2 site. But we need to change the permissions because we're going to send all the files that we currently have on our personal website to this virtual machine. So first, we do ls-lah to check the permissions. Now, the folder itself is it is owned by root, and we want to change that. So we want to change it by doing chown, by changing ownership, and we'll change it to Ubuntu owner, : and the name of the folder. But that's not it. We need to use the -R command to recursively go and change the folder to Ubuntu. So we press enter, and operation is not permitted because we need to do sudo command before the chown. So we do this, and the folder itself is changed to Ubuntu user. If we do ls-lah, we can see that it's owned by Ubuntu user. We'll change directory to HTML, and we'll rm to remove the index.html file because we won't need it anymore because we're going to overwrite it anyways. So we'll remove that file, and we'll exit. Now, we do ls, and we want to change directory into our project workspace that I've saved onto my desktop, which is personal-website. So to SCP, SCP stands for sending files. SSH is just for the remote connection. But SCP, which is a command that we'll use, stands for sending files. And we have to use .. since our key is in the directory before on our desktop. So we do tutorial-website, personal-website.pem, and we'll specify, let's see, what do we need to do? -i, .. tutorial personal-website.pem, and for now we'll do the contents that we want to upload. So that's what we need to do first. -r means recursive, so it will upload everything. Dot in the current directory. Dot stands for the current directory. So -r dot stands for uploading everything right here in the directory that we're in. And then we need to put the final destination, which is Ubuntu at the IP address :var/www/html, and we hit enter. And it'll upload all the contents in our current directory into the var www.html. And we see that I upload everything into that HTML folder in that remote machine. And these extra hexadecimal files are files from GitHub. So I've been using GitHub as a project management system to also upload the source code. So if we refresh the page, we don't have permission to access index.html. So the problem here is that if we SSH back into the machine, and we get permission denied because I'm not in the current directory of the desktop, I need to do .. right here. So by pressing up on my keyboard a couple times, I can go back to previous commands, so I don't have to write all those commands again. So I use .. tutorial personal-website.pem, and I hit enter, and I log back into the machine. I cd /var/www/html to change the directory, and I do ls. Now, I see all the contents over there, so why is the permission not valid? Well, if I do ls-lah, I can see that, if you remember correctly, I explained it shortly, where these first 3 letters is everything owned by the user. So it's readable, writable, and executable by the current Ubuntu owner. And then for this part, this is for the user group, which is Ubuntu, but for this is everyone else. So right now, it is not like no one can read or write it, not the public user. So we need to change that. So we use chmod -R to change everything recursively, and we want to give it a 755, which is readable, writable, executable by myself, only readable and writable by the group, and readable and writable by everyone else. And we hit dot. So now it's readable, writable, and the so on command 755 will be applied recursively to everything in the current directory. And I'm in the HTML folder right now. So I'll hit, before I use this command, I'll use sudo to use superuser, because we need to use superuser to change permissions on the remote machine. I'll hit enter, and it changes permissions, and if we refresh the page, I can see my personal website. Now we can see Microwave Sam's website, and our whole website's right over here. And you can visit it yourself. I'll leave this link in the description so you can see it yourself. And all the links are working perfectly. I can hit my YouTube channel and it opens to my YouTube channel, and your website is deployed. And in another tutorial, I'll leave a link in the description. I show the connections between the domain name and AWS EC2, but I won't show it to this tutorial. I've been talking a lot, and I think the tutorials are long anyway, so hopefully this gets you started, and you've learned the basics of Bootstrap. So with more experimentation, you'll learn a lot more, but I've been wanting to do this tutorial, HTML, CSS, and Bootstrap for a while, and now I've done it. So hopefully you learned a thing or two. The tutorials were long, but hopefully the details will help you get started, and you'll learn a lot more from here on out. Because I'm trying to give you the tools so that you can learn and be independent by yourself. And that requires a lot of detail sometimes, but now you're on your own 2 feet, and you've learned a lot. So thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you've enjoyed this long tutorial series, and please rate, comment, subscribe. See you guys later.